Okay, so first thing we went over in this unit was so long ago, you know, Monday. And on Monday, we went over climate. Okay, what do you need to know about climate? You need to know these things. You need to know what are the 4 components of climate. Temperature, precipitation, light, and wind. Okay, you got to know the 4 components. And you need to know the factors that affect those 4 components. Okay, the factors we went over: latitude, altitude, presence of mountain barriers, so location of centers of high and low pressure, proximity to oceans. Okay, all that stuff that is in the notes for lesson 1. Okay, so you have to know that stuff. Obviously, it has to be committed to memory or memorized. But what I'm going to ask you to do with that is, yes, there'll be some multiple choice questions about climate and factors. Okay, but in the written response, I'm going to put a picture of a map of Canada. I'm going to put an arrow on that map pointing to a city. And you will have to tell me, what do you think the climate of that area would be like based on the factors that would affect its climate? Okay, so you'll have to look at where is it? Okay, what things do you think would be present there? Would latitude play a factor? Yes, it does for everything. Okay, would altitude play a factor? Would there be mountain barriers? Would there be a proximity to an ocean? Okay, that kind of stuff. And talk about how those things would make the climate the way you think it is. Okay, now I don't expect that you know what the climate in every city in Canada is. Okay, that is not my expectation. I'm picking something that's going to have very obvious factors affecting it. Okay, picking a location that's easy. I'm not picking middle of nowhere Manitoba. Okay, it's somewhere that will be, the factors will be quite obvious. And all you have to do is talk about how those factors would affect the climate of that area. Okay, if you make logical arguments about that, that's what I'm looking for. Okay, everybody follow me there. All right, so that's what there will be about climate. Okay, so that kind of written response question, and then some multiple choice about, is this a factor, or is this a component, or stuff like that. Okay. Then climatograms. As we said yesterday, what we're going to ask you to do with climatograms is match it with a biome and explain why. Okay. That's going to be a 5-mark question. Okay, I'll put a climatogram on the exam, and you have to interpret the climatogram. So tell me what it says about that area's precipitation, amounts, patterns. Okay, its temperature, patterns. Okay, what kinds of things might cause those patterns to be the way they are, and then use that to justify your choice of biome. Okay, so if I showed you a climatogram that was a flat temperature line, okay, that was up around 30 degrees Celsius pretty much the whole year, okay, and then I showed you in the bars were basically non-existent, okay, there's one little tiny one in July, okay, and that's it. Everything else is basically 0, okay. You would say to me, this area is obviously very dry, because the precipitation bars are non-existent. You would say to me, the temperature changes very little, and that means that this biome is located near the equator. Okay, so now you've explained, you said, I can interpret this climatogram, I know what it means, I know what it's telling me, and now I'm going to tell you, Mr. Coderre, that I think this is a hot desert biome that would be located near the equator. Done. Okay, so you've interpreted the climatogram, you've explained why it fits with the biome you chose. Okay, does that make sense to everybody? So it's a 5-mark question. 3 of the marks are for your interpretation of the climatogram, 1 mark for the correct biome, okay, and 1 mark for kind of tying it together. Okay. Okay. Energy transfers in global systems. Okay, so this was lesson 3. And this is where we talked about what happens to light when it strikes the Earth's surface? What are the three things that can happen to it? One of them is there. It can be absorbed, reflected. The third one's always the trickiest one. Converted. Okay, by what? Plants, photosynthesis. Okay, so you got to know those three things. Okay, you got to know what's going on. Okay, when light strikes the Earth's surface, you probably want to talk about albedo, because it's albedo that determines how much is absorbed and how much is reflected, okay, and how much also is used. Okay, I say used here, but you could also say converted, as long as you mention that the process doing the use or conversion is photosynthesis. Okay, the way I'm going to ask that is this. I have taken a picture from Google Earth, okay, just like randomly of some place in Canada, okay, and just randomly snapped a satellite photo of an area of Canada. And all I'm going to ask you is, based on what you see in this picture, talk about what's happening to the light that strikes this area. Okay, so you need to look at the picture, think about this, okay, think about albedo, think about these three things, and talk about how much of these is going on. Okay, if I'm showing you a picture of the Columbia ice fields, okay, then it's not. Okay, but if it was, okay, then you would probably say that the majority of the energy is being reflected because the albedo of ice is very high. Okay, that sort of makes sense? Okay? Like, none of these questions are terribly taxing, guys. I'm just telling you, here's what you have to be able to do for me. Okay, you have to be able to look at this thing and tell me what you know and apply.
Does absorption and like conversion kind of play hand in hand together? Like, if how would you know if something was being used or something like via photosynthesis on like a satellite graph?
Okay, good question. Here's what I've done in the past. I took a picture of a volcanic slope, which was basically covered in black rock. The albedo of that is very low. Most of the energy is being absorbed, but none of it is being converted because there's no what? There's no plants. So you have to look at this picture. It's in color, okay, because that plays a role, obviously. Okay, and you have to tell me, okay, well, there's there's a lot of plants. If there's a lot of plants, then there's going to be absorption. There's going to be conversion, and there may be some lighter areas. Maybe there's a body of water in the picture that could be highly reflective. We don't know. Okay, you have to kind of look at the picture and go, here's what I think. Unless you're like just way off, there's not really a wrong answer. Okay, like if I showed you the Columbia ice fields and you said all of the energy is going to be converted, you're wrong. Okay, but if you made an argument and kind of talked through it logically, you really can't go wrong. It's not like, don't overthink it.
And like for those kind of questions, would you choose one or can you choose like
You have to talk about them all, because all are going to happen.
Oh, okay.
Right? Like even if I showed you the picture of the Columbia ice fields, maybe there's a part that, there's a rock exposed. Around that rock, the albedo would be lower, the ice would melt around that rock. There are no plants, so there's no conversion. You would still have to say that.
Yeah.
Which one would the northern lights be again? Like, there's probably not going to be, but if you like put a picture of northern lights, which one do you think would be? Would that be like reflected maybe?
No, the northern lights are nothing to do with this.
They wouldn't.
They're the magnetic field deflecting and slowing solar particles.
Yeah, see, okay.
It has nothing to do
I thought
with
it was
what,
like,
this is when it hits the Earth. It's
Okay.
already gotten through. Yeah. The northern lights are just about like the really harmful stuff, not the heat.
okay.
We're just talking about the thermal and visible light, not the gamma rays and microwaves that get deflected by the magnetic field.
Okay.
Okay. Questions on that? Okay, also talk about, atmosphere. There's going to be some stuff about the atmosphere and the hydrosphere in terms of energy transfers, how the water cycle, works in terms of transferring the latent heat. Okay, remember when water evaporates, it's taking all that energy with it and bringing it to another area. Okay, things like that are going to be important. Okay, know about conduction, convection, and radiation. Okay, because convection is how energy gets around the Earth. Okay, in the Earth's atmosphere, somewhat in the hydrosphere even, okay, with ocean currents, but okay, convection is our main method of energy transfer once it gets here. Okay, it obviously gets here by radiation, right, and conduction plays a very, very small role. Okay, now with the convection, conduction, and radiation, I talked about this that day when we went over it, but I said you're going to be asked to apply what you know of heat transfer to a practical application. So design something that can keep stuff hot, or design something that can keep stuff cold that's not using electricity, fire, okay, or anything else. Okay, it has to be based on how can you allow energy to transfer into it, or how can you keep energy from transferring into it. Tell me how you would stop or harness the three methods of heat transfer in that particular situation, right? We talked about how insulation in your walls keeps the heat in and stuff like that. That's basically what you would have to explain in the context of whatever situation I give you.
So for this kind of like concept or whatever, like a written response would be like more like world applications, but then like there wouldn't be any about like how energy transfers within the atmosphere or whatever, or?
No,
Okay.
it would be more, yeah, like a real world, very practical application, like build a thermos or, yeah, something like that. Okay, and wind patterns. That was one of the things I took out. So you don't have to know anything about that. Okay, nothing about wind patterns, jet stream, Coriolis effect, or any of that. Just too bad because I bought a big exercise ball to demonstrate the Coriolis effect last semester. I still haven't gotten to use it. Okay. Specific heat capacity. All right, so we talked about that. Okay, you just need to know what it is. There's like 2 multiple choice questions or something like that about specific heat capacity, and then there's obviously a written response problem with 5 marks. That's just like the ones you did on the worksheet. Okay, super easy. Okay, solve for either E, M, C, or delta T. Okay, and if you need C, it will be given to you. Spoiler alert, it's given to you. Okay, also remember that specific heat capacity is why proximity to oceans is a factor that affects climate, right? The ocean is able to absorb and hold large amounts of energy, okay, without changing its temperature, and that can regulate your climate. Okay, so remember that that's probably going to want to be part of your explanation when you're doing that question with the city. Okay, if you're talking about, you know, proximity to oceans as part of that, that's probably something you'd want to work into your answer. If I give you Saskatoon, then probably not, because that's in the middle of the country and nowhere near an ocean. And by the way, Saskatoon is nowhere near an ocean in case you're geographically challenged. All right, and then latent heat. So latent heat is different. We taught it differently this semester just because we didn't want to go through all the heating curve calculations. Okay, so remember that you're going to have, there's 2 questions in the written response, okay, and they are very simply, one is asking you about one of these formulas and the other is asking about the other. Okay, they're just problem solving questions. Okay, one's worth 3 and one's worth 2. There's like really simple calculations. You're going to get 2 out of the 3 parts of that formula, and you have to solve for the other. Okay, like they're honestly gimme questions. Okay. All right. Are these 2 numbers here? Latent heat of fusion. That's on your test. Okay, it's given to you. You don't have to memorize that LF is 333 joules per gram. Okay, and similarly LV, which is 2,260 joules per gram, the amount of energy needed to evaporate 1 gram of water, that's also on your test. You don't have to memorize it. Okay, but you need to be able to use it. Okay, to manipulate and solve for those questions. Okay, so the trickiest part of those questions is deciding, do I use this formula or this formula? Okay, one uses one, the other uses the other.
So which one, like, have you decide which one to use again? Like one is like diffusion, is that like for cooling and heating, and then these for evaporation?
Like that. You have to look at the context of the question. If the question is about melting or freezing, it's this one. If it's about evaporation or condensation, it's this one, right? So they deal with different phase changes. This one deals with the liquid solid phase change. This one deals with the liquid vapor phase change. Okay. And then the last thing, biomes. There's a few multiple choice questions, picture, description. Okay, figure out which biome it is from the picture / description, and you're set. Okay, so this is by far your shortest, and I don't like saying this, easiest test. The last time I said this test is easier than the last one, didn't go well. But truth telling is important. This test is really easy. Okay? I mean, we only have 4 days worth of material on this test. Okay? There's very little here. Okay? So study it well, because this test is worth the same amount as your chemistry test, your biology test, physics test. Okay? So this is a big opportunity to boost what is probably the lowest part of your mark. Okay? I mean, for most people, your unit exam part is, one of the lower parts of your mark. So this is an opportunity to bump that up right before the final. Okay? Also remember our deal with the final. Okay? It is worth 10% regardless of how you do on it, but it can replace your lowest unit exam mark, which had better not be this unit exam. Okay? All right. There are 22 multiple choice questions. And there are 7 written. And 3 of those 7 will probably take combined 10 minutes. Okay. So in the multiple choice, I'm looking at layers of the earth. Okay, atmosphere, lithosphere, hydrosphere. Okay, soil layers. So topsoil, A horizon, B horizon. Okay, stuff like that. 3 biome questions. Climate question. Three questions about the parts of the water cycle. A couple of questions about factors affecting climate. And then about 5 questions about heat transfer. So that would be conduction, convection, radiation, albedo, okay, all of that kind of stuff. About 5 questions on that. Then some stuff about heat capacity, some more stuff about albedo and absorption and transfer. That's it. Okay, so written response, your climatogram, your map question, your satellite picture question, your heat transfer question, your specific heat capacity problem, and then your 2 latent heat problems, the MLF and MLB. And that's it. So, on every other test, I'd let you come in early. I'll still let you do that if it makes you feel better, but I don't think you're gonna need to. And quite frankly, I think I'll have this test marked before the bell goes. Okay, partly because there's, fewer of us, and partly because you're just gonna be done that fast. That's what's on there. That's it. Okay, you got a pretty good idea of what to go over this weekend, okay, in terms of that. But you're also gonna need to spend a bit of time looking over your other stuff. Okay, because, next week, you're gonna have your Science 10 final exam as well. Okay, and you're gonna wanna be ready for that one. Okay, the good news about a final exam is there's never anything new on it. Right, it's all stuff you've done already. Okay. And in regards to the final exam, okay, my philosophy on the final exam is that is not where I put the hardest questions I can make up. Okay, what makes a final exam difficult is the amount of material, not the level of difficulty. Okay, so on a final exam, I am simply assessing, do you still remember this? Are you still able to demonstrate your skills on this? Okay, so I am not going to think up the hardest cellular transport question I can possibly come up with and put it on the final. I'm gonna ask you a pretty basic question about cellular transport. Okay, same with, predicting a chemical reaction. I'm not gonna think up the hardest reaction that I could possibly think up that'd be really tricky to balance. I'm gonna give you basic ones. Okay, you just need to demonstrate to me, I retained the stuff you taught me before.
Are we gonna be able to come at lunch to look at our past unit test?
Yes, you can, next week.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll dig them out. Okay, the only caveat there is your phone must be surrendered before you complete your tests.
Okay.
Okay? What to write down? Like, what do you mean, like?
Like the stuff I didn't do grade on?
Oh, yeah, that's what you would be doing, I would hope, yeah, yeah, absolutely.
For the test on Friday, for the soil layers, would we have to know like specific biomes kind of?
No, like, I might put that as part of the description for the biome question, but it's not something that's probably gonna be super important for you to identify that biome. It might just be in there as a piece of information, but I'm not gonna show you a picture of a soil horizon and go, what biome is this from? I'm not gonna do that, okay? It'll be, hey, here's a picture of a soil profile. What layer is this one? So other stuff about the final exam, guys. For your final, you will get a fresh periodic table and data sheet. Okay, so you don't need to go finding yours or panic that you've lost yours. Okay, you're getting a fresh one for the final exam. What you need to bring to your final exam is your calculator and your writing utensils. Okay, pen and pencil, I would say. Probably bring at least 2 of each. Right, that way if you break a pencil, you're not waiting for us to come around with a pencil sharpener. Okay, something like that. So bring a couple of each. And that's it. Okay, your calculator and what you're gonna write with is all you absolutely must have for the final exam. Since it is a 2-hour exam, I would suggest you probably bring a bottle of water, okay, and maybe an exam appropriate snack. Okay, and by exam appropriate snack, I mean something that's not smelly, something that's not greasy, okay, something that's not really, really crunchy, right? Because I have had all of those things happen in final exams before. Okay, I once had a kid who brought in a 500-gram bag of Doritos and a 2-liter Coke. Okay, so he was going to be lynched. Okay, because he chewed with his mouth open. Okay, like crunch, crunch, crinkle, crinkle, crinkle. Okay, it was annoying the heck out of everybody around him. So just when you're choosing your snack, pick something, granola bar or an apple or something like that. Okay, that's not going to be too messy or too noisy or bother people. Because I also had a kid who brought in a roasted chicken and like literally brought in the roasted chicken from Sobeys, still hot. He had just bought it, okay, and like the mashed potatoes, and like I don't know when he was gonna write his test, but like he brought in a full 4-course meal, okay, for his final exam, and the whole gym smelled like roasted chicken, which made everybody hungry and probably annoyed. So yeah, don't bring stuff that's gonna possibly be bothersome to other people. Just try
much time like do we get for the
You get
exam?
2 hours. Yeah, 2-hour test, you get 2 hours, at the end of 2 hours, they come and rip the test away from you. Okay? Please don't make me do that, it's really awkward. I have had to do it, but it's really awkward, so yeah. You must stay for 1 hour. Okay, the minimum amount of time to be in a 2-hour exam is 1 hour. You will not be allowed to leave until 1 hour has elapsed. If you're done my test in 1 hour, I don't think you did very well. Okay, and I'm not throwing down the gauntlet of challenge on that. Okay, I'm not saying prove me wrong. I'm just saying take your time. It's a 2-hour test. It should probably take you between an hour and a half and an hour and 40 minutes to do the test, and then you have some time to look at it. Okay, if you're scrambling at the end of 2 hours to finish, you know, you probably just didn't make really good use of your time. Okay, it took me about, I think it was about 35 or 40 minutes to make the key. Okay, so, and by the time they got to make the test, I should be able to make the key pretty fast. Okay, so I would expect it should take you guys an hour and a half to an hour and 40, 45 minutes.
Is it separated into units?
It is, yes.
So like one will have the written response and the multiple choice of one unit?
No.
Or is it like two different?
There's the written response, and it goes by unit. So it'll be unit 1 written response, unit 2 written response, unit 3 written response, unit 4 written response.
Okay.
And then the multiple choice, they also go the same way. Unit 1 multiple choice, unit 2 multiple choice. So you open it up and you see the multiple choice. It's chemistry questions, then it's
Okay.
biology questions, then it's physics questions. Yeah, so it is grouped by unit, so you can kind of get into a groove, or if you have a favorite unit, do that one first. You don't have to do it in order, okay? In fact, the best test takers do not do tests in order. Okay, my recommendation is always that you open up the test and take 10 minutes to read it through. And while you're reading it through, like check off or rank the questions. Okay, I always do that. When I'm taking a test, I go through it and I rank. I'm like, I know I can do that one. That's an easy one. I'm gonna do that one first. Okay, I'm gonna do this one second. And oh crap, I have no idea how to do that one. I'm gonna do it last. Okay, that way I get all the stuff I know I'm confident in done for sure. Okay, because if time becomes a factor, I don't want to miss doing the questions I know how to do because I sat and stared at a question I couldn't do. Okay, so do the questions you know are easy or are easy for you, do them first. It builds your confidence too, right? If the first question on the test is something you don't know how to do, skip it. Okay, move on to the next one. Don't sit there, because I've had people who literally stare at a question and burn 15 or 20 minutes and accomplish nothing. And then at the end, they're scrambling to finish. Okay, don't let that be you. Okay, do the questions you're confident in first.
Would you say that the amount of questions for each unit are pretty equal, or like are there more questions in some units than others?
It isn't distributed perfectly equally. The first 3 units are pretty equal. There might be a little bit more in chemistry and physics than there is in bio, just because of the nature of the type of questions I have to ask for those. So there might be a little bit more in there. Unit 4 is definitely the smallest, part of the final exam. So it's fairly even.
Where is the test?
You guys are writing it, I believe, in Mr. Dickey's room. Okay, so right next door to me on this side. Right, so I'm supervising my period 4 in my classroom here, okay, but I will just jet through the interdimensional portal, okay, and check on you guys periodically and answer questions if you have. Mr. Dickey can also answer all of your questions. I think he's supervising that.
Do you write in the morning?
Yes, 9 a.m. Okay, oh, sorry, I keep forgetting you guys haven't written here before. Okay, so here's what happens. Be sure you're here by 8:45. Okay, because you usually get let into the rooms about 10 to 9. Okay, you come in, the tests will all be laid out. They already have your name on them, okay, for your final exam. So just come in and look for your test. I usually just lay them out in alphabetical order, okay, but the desks will be arranged this way. Okay, and I'll start the alphabet by the pencil sharpener. Okay, so last name, okay, that's the way it'll go. So just come in, find your test, sit down. Get your stuff ready. I'll come around and clear your calculator, okay, because we have to do that. We have to blank your calculator. So if you have any important data stored on your calculator for some reason, transfer it off before your exams, because we will blank them. Okay, we have to come around and clear them out in case anyone has stored stuff on. Yeah, so we'll come around, we'll do that, we'll give you the instructions. Usually we've got you underway in writing like 5 minutes ahead of time, and we let you write until 11. So you usually get a little bit more than 2 hours. Okay, and then like we give you a warning about every 10 minutes in the last half hour, and then we give you a 5-minute at the end as well. So you'll know when the exam is coming to a close.
How many would you say like written response per each unit? Like,
It's a bit different just because of the nature of each unit. So I honestly, I don't remember now how many there were for each. There's more marks but less questions in physics and chemistry because the questions are worth more marks. So there might be more questions for bio because you're explaining stuff rather than showing me steps in a calculation or solution. So something like that, I guess.
and like, will the written response be similar to like the written response in other tests?
This test is identical to a unit exam, just longer.
Okay.
Yeah, so multiple choice, written response.
But
same as
like,
before.
say like on the biology test that we already did, like it would be similar like questions or like topics you'd be quizzed
Oh,
on
yeah.
on the written response.
Yeah, in fact, some of the questions will probably look very familiar. Yeah. I didn't copy the questions over, but like I have to test the same thing. So yeah, if you look at a question, and go, gee, that sounds a lot like the one on the unit exam. Good for you. Okay, that means you're well prepared, and yes, you understand I am asking you the same things that I asked you on the unit exams.
Are the buses going to be?
The buses will run at their regular times. So if you're wanting to go home after your test, you will have to get a ride because the buses won't come until the end of the day. They don't change the bus schedule, okay? But the buses do run, same as they always do. Okay? And guys, we do encourage you not to be in school when you don't have a test. So if your test is finished, you should be out of here before the afternoon exams start because it can be very distracting for people trying to write their exams. If people are wandering the school, talking in the atrium really carries, and we're supposed to have our doors open and stuff for ventilation. And I know I never do that, but we're supposed to. And a lot of people will, so make sure that you can find a way home. You ain't got to go home, but you got to get the hell out of here, okay, after your test. Okay. Unless you're going to a specific teacher for help and you've made arrangements for something like that. Right? Any other questions? With your phones, okay, so on your final exams, the phones are the same as what we do. They have to be surrendered, they have to be powered down completely, as do any smartwatches, okay? Anything like that, you can't have headphones on or anything like that during a final exam. Okay, there's the only electronic device you can have at your desk is your calculator. Okay, so anything else has to be powered down and put away, collected by us for security reasons. Not that I think any of you would do this, but just so you're aware, if you get caught cheating, you get a 0. Okay, and that's another one of those really awkward situations, okay, that we don't want to have to encounter, okay, but if you are caught cheating on the final, you take a 0, and I'm not sure how it'll work for this semester, but in normal semesters, if you get a 0 on the final exam, you don't get credit for the course, regardless of whether you still passed it. So, because it's kind of you cheated on the most important test, what else did you cheat on? Okay, so cheating's bad. Don't do that. So yeah, just make sure you don't get caught with something during the test. Okay, like surrender your phone. Okay, the times that I've caught people, it's been they had a phone in their pocket, and they knew full well they weren't supposed to. Okay, like you can't possibly walk into one of our tests, be asked for your phone, sit down with your phone in your pocket, and think you're going to get away with that. Okay, like you've been told you'll be asked. Okay? We don't want to have to encounter that situation. Okay? I think that's all you're going to need to know about your final. We'll talk a little bit more about the layout of it on Tuesday. Okay, how many questions and stuff like that, because I actually have to go through it either today or Monday and cross off the stuff you're not going to do for Unit 4 on the final, because there are a few things that are on the final that we didn't cover because I printed it out in December. So. All right, questions from you guys? Okay, the last page of the digital workbook, okay, for this unit is the review sheet for this unit exam. Now, Question number 10, about wind patterns. Cross it off, you don't have to do it. Okay, so or just write down somewhere that you don't have to do question number 10. It is about wind patterns, and we did not cover that. And you will not be able to solve question number 15 either. Okay, it is a heating curve question, and we didn't do heating curves. Okay, so 10 and 15 are out. You don't have to do those. You will have basically no knowledge of how to do them. Okay, so you don't have to do those two. Everything else is game for the test. All right, well, you got some time left. Work on that. Okay, if there's more questions, I'm happy to answer.
Can you go back to the smartboard thing after this part of the, yeah, and just scroll up to the atmosphere? Yes, thanks.
No problem.